decided to make the journey to the city again. And I couldn't be happier. I'm your host, Brendan Jordan. Welcome back once again, or maybe for the first time, to City of Fear. It's the last full month of summer, and time is flying. Well, feels that way for me, at least. Just been practicing up for my yearly dart season, working on my hot pepper garden, spending some time with friends, and, of course, working on these episodes so I have something to present you with. What have y'all been up to? Shoot me some messages on the City of Fear Facebook or Instagram page so I can put some names and faces to the folks listening out there. Even though you just made it into the city, our story this week is going to take you out of the city and into the woods. So tonight, without further ado, I present to you The Mystery of the Red River by Mari Elizabeth Holston. I was sitting in an old bar in a small town in Arkansas, nursing a beer, when I overheard a young man talking to the bartender. He was a scrawny, nerdy-looking thing, early to mid-20s maybe. A bright fire in his eyes as he asked about anything strange ever seen in the surrounding woods. My interest was piqued. I called him over, told him I had a story, one that happened nearly 40 years ago. He turned towards me cautiously, probably a little intimidated by my size. Always been a large man, over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with a mountain man beard, dark hair, and darker eyes. "You said you have a story to tell?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, gesturing for him to sit. "I was just a boy when it happened, but still feels like yesterday." The young man slid into the booth across from me, his bright green eyes sharp with curiosity. Clean-shaven and eager, he quickly pulled out a notepad, gripping his pen like he was afraid he might miss something important. "I'm doing a college research project," he said, "about mysteries in the woods." "Well then," I said, taking a slow sip of my beer, "my story ought to fit nicely." I leaned back, staring for a moment at the amber liquid in my glass before beginning. Nearly 40 years ago, when I was around 10 years old, my mother and father decided we'd spend a week in a cabin near Red River. We arrived sometime around mid-morning without much trouble. Peace never lasted long with my father. The second we pulled up, he started in on my mother because the cabin looked dingy. It was her fault, naturally. Mama, Veda, had chosen the place because it was the nicest one she could find within the budget he'd given her, but that didn't matter. Daddy, Jake, stood there on the porch, tearing into her like a hound on a wounded rabbit, calling her stupid, lazy, useless, all because the paint was peeling and the porch sagged a little. That was just how Jake was. Any little thing that went wrong became Mama's burden to carry. When Mama wasn't around, that burden usually fell on me. Eventually, things settled some. We unpacked. Mama made sandwiches for lunch. Daddy complained about those too, of course. Too much mayo, not enough meat, bread too stale. Didn't matter, nothing ever did. After we ate, Daddy decided he wanted some alone time with Mama, so he kicked me out. "Go play," he barked. "Don't you go past the river." He said it like a law, firm, final, not to be questioned. I grabbed my bag and left without asking how long I was supposed to stay gone. Truth be told, being anywhere but near him suited me just fine. I wandered through the woods, ducking under low branches and stepping over thick roots that twisted through the earth like snake backs. Eventually, I heard it. Steady rush of the water cutting through the trees. The river. The sound grew louder until the woods finally opened, revealing Red River stretching wide and restless before me. I stopped at the bank and just stared. The water moved fast, churning and rolling like it had somewhere important to be. It felt alive in a way the cabin never could, wild and free, uncaring about yelling fathers or frightened mothers. For the first time all day, I could breathe. Daddy had said not to go past the river, so I didn't. I stayed firmly on my side, though I couldn't help staring across it. The forest on the other bank was different, denser, darker. The trees stood so thick, it was hard to see between them, their branches tangled together like bony fingers. was a small opening across the way, maybe an old trail once, but nature had mostly swallowed it back up. I found a place beneath a massive old oak tree, dropped my bag, pulled out my sketchbook. Drawing was one of the few things I was good at, one of the only things that could quiet my mind, so I sketched. I drew the rushing river, the muddy bank, the endless sea of trees beyond it. When I finished, I smiled. It was good, maybe even one of my best. I tucked my pencils away and glanced at the sky. Still plenty of daylight left, so I decided to walk along the riverbank. First, everything seemed normal. The rush of the water, birdsong overhead, the hum of the insects hidden in the brush. And little by little, it all stopped. I don't mean it faded. I mean it stopped. I'd been walking maybe 20 minutes when I noticed the silence. The birds were gone. The cicadas had fallen quiet. Even the river, though I could still see it moving, made no sound at all. It was as if the whole world had suddenly decided to hold its breath. A cold knot twisted in my stomach. I slowed to a stop and looked around, and that's when I felt it. That awful crawling certainty that something was watching me. Slowly I turned my head toward the other side of the river, toward the dense wall of trees. I couldn't see anything, but I knew deep down, in the oldest part of my bones, that something was there, watching. My chest tightened. Then, crack! A branch snapped in the distance, not on my side, across the river. I ran. I tore through the woods as fast as my legs could carry me, branches whipping at my face, roots threatening to send me sprawling. Behind me, I could hear nothing, but somehow, that was worse. Then suddenly, I burst through the tree line near the cabins, and sound came crashing back all at once. Crickets, wind, distant laughter, slam and scream doors. I nearly collapsed from the force of it. The sun was sinking low by then, painting the sky orange and gold. Fear shifted, because now I had another problem. Dinner. Daddy never had to say it outright. I already knew. If I wasn't back by dinner, I didn't eat. So I hurried back to the cabin, trying to quiet my breathing before I opened the cabin door. I stepped inside carefully, listening for any clue about what kind of mood waited for me. "Nathan!" Daddy's voice hit like thunder. "You missed dinner. Go to your room." I flinched, but honestly, that was better than what I expected. So I went. That night, lying in bed with a fantasy book with a flashlight glowing under the sheets, I told myself the fear in those woods had just been my imagination. But even then, I don't think I really believed it. For the next 3 days, things felt different. Not perfect, not by any stretch. Different enough that even 10-year-old me noticed. Daddy still had his temper. Mama still walked on eggshells when his voice got too sharp. But for the first time in a long while, it was like some of whatever poison he carried around in him had eased its grip. He even set aside the bottle more than once, long enough to actually be there with us. We played old board games at the rickety kitchen table while rain tapped softly against the cabin windows. No, he still got too competitive. There were moments, small, strange moments, where he laughed. Real laughter, the kind I barely remembered hearing. During the days, we hiked through the woods together, staying on marked trails while Daddy pointed out deer tracks, strange birds, and animal prints pressed into the mud like he was some kind of wilderness guide instead of the man I knew back home. We even went fishing down by the riverbank, though never too close to the part where the trees across the water grew thick and wrong. Daddy always kept us a good distance from there. I remember thinking more than once that maybe this trip has changed something. Maybe being away from home, away from work, away from whatever darkness usually followed him, made him lighter. Mama smiled more during those days too. Still tired, still careful, but softer somehow. And me? I let myself believe it. I let myself pretend we were like the families I'd seen on TV, the kind that laughed over card games, told stories over burnt hot dogs, and Made happy memories in little cabins in the woods. Looking back now, I think that was the cruelest part of it all. How normal those 3 days felt before everything went bad. On the fourth morning, I woke up to shouting. Not the ordinary sharp words or bitter muttering I've grown used to, but the kind of screaming that rattled the cabin walls and jerked me upright before I was even fully awake. Daddy was roaring, his voice thick with rage, the kind that sounded less human, more like some wounded thing cornered and dangerous. He was calling Mama every name he knew: slut, whore, liar. His boots pounded against the floorboards as he demanded to know who she'd been talking to, accusing her of sneaking around with some man while he slept. Mama was crying, swearing she hadn't done anything, her voice trembling so badly I could barely understand her through his yelling. Then came the first crack. Sharp, awful, unmistakable. Sound of his hand hitting her. Panic hit me like lightning under my skin. I didn't think, didn't speak, I just moved. I grabbed my bag, slipped out that cabin door, and ran like if I stayed, I might be next. My feet carried me through the woods on pure instinct, straight back to the old oak by the riverbank. The same tree where I'd sketched on that first day. My safe place, or at least the closest thing I had to one. I collapsed beneath it, shaking hard enough I could barely unzip my bag, and dug out the fantasy book I'd brought from home. It was worn and creased from how many times I'd read it. Some story about brave children, enchanted forests, and parents who were kind. Parents who protected each other, who protected their children. I buried myself in those pages like they were a doorway, clinging to that make-believe world with desperate hands, because even a glimpse of that kind of kindness, real or imagined, felt better than the life waiting for me back in that cabin. It was about halfway through the chapter when something small but hard smacked against my arm. I yelped and dropped the book as my eyes darted wildly around me. A pebble. Just a small stone lay in the dirt beside me. My breathing turned ragged as I shot to my feet, every nerve in my body suddenly alive with fear. I looked around frantically, scanning the riverbank, the brush, the twisting shadows between the trees, trying to figure out where it had come from. For one terrible second, I thought maybe Daddy had followed me, but then I saw it. Across the river, deep in the dense thicket, where the sunlight barely touched the forest floor, something stood between the trees. Massive. First, my mind tried to make it part of the woods itself. Its shape almost matched the bark around it, broad and tall and earth-colored. But something was wrong. The texture. It wasn't wood. It was fur. Thick, matted, bark brown fur that blended so well with the trees it felt like looking at something the forest had grown itself. Then it shifted, just slightly, but enough. Enough for me to see the unnatural size of it, the impossible width of its shoulders, the suggestion of long arms hanging too still at its sides. I froze so completely, I forgot how to breathe. Then it made a sound. Low and guttural, like a deep-chested growl dragged over broken branches, mixed with the wet, warbling howl of something ancient and wounded. It started almost like a distant bear's moan, but twisted upward into a rattling, shrieking bellow that didn't sound entirely animal or human. It was the kind of sound that hit you in your spine before your ears, something primal and wrong enough to wake fear buried deep in your blood. The second that noise echoed through the trees, the woods died. Not faded, died. The birds stopped mid-song. The insects fell silent. Even the wind seemed to vanish. And the river, though I could still see the current moving, made no sound at all. It was as if the entire forest had gone still in terror, like nature itself was afraid. I didn't stop for my book. Didn't look back. Didn't think. I just ran. My legs just moved, carrying me as fast as they could through roots, brush, and snapping branches, while my heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst clean out of my chest. I tore through the woods in blind panic, gasping for breath, every awful possibility clawing through my mind. That thing was chasing me. It was watching me. It was right behind me. Then I broke through the tree line and hit that wall of sound again. Crickets, wind, birds, distant slam of a screen door somewhere down the row of cabins. It crashed into me all at once, though not as violently as the first time, like the world was slowly remembering how to breathe. I stumbled but kept going. When our cabin came into view, the front door was hanging wide open. My stomach dropped. Even from outside, I could hear Daddy screaming, his voice raw and vicious, and Mama crying so hard it sounded like something inside her had broken. I slowed on the porch steps, suddenly unsure which was worse, whatever I'd just seen in those woods, or walking back into this. My hand trembled as I reached for the screen door, bracing myself for the inevitable shouting, for Daddy's anger, for punishment. The second Mama saw me, everything changed. "Nathan!" she cried. She rushed toward me so fast it startled me, dropping to her knees and wrapping me in her arms before I could even say a word. She held me tight, tighter than she ever had before, like she needed to know I was real, that I was whole. Her hands shook as they pressed against my back, my hair, my face. "Where have you been, baby?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Oh God, where were you?" Behind her, Daddy glared at us both, his chest heaving, his face red with fury, but for once, he didn't say a word to me. He just muttered something under his breath, stomped down the hall, and slammed the bedroom door so hard the whole cabin rattled. And that's when I broke. Everything I'd been holding in, the fear, the silence, the pebble, the thing across the river, I just collapsed into her. I cried harder than I ever had in my life, clutching her shirt while the words came tumbling out between gasping breaths. I told her about the woods going quiet, about the rock hitting me, about the giant shape in the trees, that impossible, fur-covered thing that looked like the forest itself had come alive. I told her about the sound it made, that awful cry that seemed to scare the whole world silent. Mama listened. She didn't laugh, didn't tell me I imagined it, didn't even look surprised. Instead, she just held me tighter, gently brushed my sweaty hair back from my forehead. Her face looked pale, not with disbelief, but with something worse. Recognition. "Oh, baby," she whispered. "Sometimes there are old things in these woods, ancient things." I looked up at her, my whole body still shaking. "What kind of things?" Her eyes flicked nervously toward the window, toward the distant tree line, before settling back on me. "The kind people used to know better than to fear right away," she said softly. "Not everything old is evil, Nathan. Some things watch, some protect, especially when they sense pain." I didn't fully understand what she meant then, but I remember the way she said it, like it wasn't some fairy tale meant to calm me down, like it was something her own mama had told her once, something passed down quiet-like, the way warnings often are. "They say," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "that deep in places untouched by man, there are ancient beings that keep to the shadows. Every now and then, they look after folks who need help most." I remember glancing back towards the woods through the open cabin door, toward that unseen river beyond the trees. For the first time since that pebble struck my arm, my fear changed. Because maybe, just maybe, whatever I saw out there wasn't hunting me. Maybe it had been watching over me all along. That night, Daddy stayed locked up in the bedroom. At first, I thought maybe he'd passed out from too much whiskey, or maybe whatever rage had possessed him that morning had finally burned itself out. But Mama knew better. I could tell by the way her shoulders stayed tense, like she was waiting for thunder even when the sky looked clear. So for the first time in as long as I could remember, it was just me and her. We sat together on the old, scratchy couch while the last golden strands of sunlight slipped through the cabin windows and slowly gave way to dusk. Mama kept the TV on low, though neither of us was really watching it. Mostly we just existed beside each other in that rare, fragile piece. She even let me lay my head in her lap like I used to when I was little. For a while, her fingers moved gently through my hair in slow, absent strokes. I remember thinking then, this is what safe feels like. After a long silence, Mama finally spoke. Not loudly, not even directly. More like she was testing the shape of the words before saying them too firmly. "Nathan," she said softly, "if we ever had to leave, really leave, would you be okay with that?" I tilted my head to look up at her. "Leave where?" She swallowed hard, her hand pausing in my hair for just a second before continuing. "Just away. You and me. Somewhere better." Even at 10, I understood more than adults like to think. I knew she wasn't talking about leaving the cabin. I sat up then, really looked at her, at the bruise beginning to darken near her cheekbone, exhaustion in her eyes, the fear she tried so hard to hide. "Yes," I whispered. "I'd go." Mama smiled then, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind that comes when hope hurts almost as much as despair. "I want to," she admitted, her voice trembling. "God, Nathan, I want to so bad. I don't know how." Before I could answer, a loud crash shattered the moment. Something slammed against the wall in the back bedroom. Mama stiffened. Then came another crash. Glass breaking, furniture scraping, a lamp, or maybe a chair splinter against something hard. Daddy was awake. The cabin seemed to shrink around us as night fully swallowed the dark outside. Shadows stretched long and strange across the walls while Daddy rampaged in the bedroom, cursing, yelling, throwing things with reckless drunken fury. I grabbed Mama's hand. She squeezed mine so tightly it almost hurt. Then, silence. Terrible, dreadful silence. The bedroom door creaked open. Daddy staggered out. One look at him turned my blood cold. His eyes were bloodshot, so red they barely looked human anymore, and filled with a kind of rage I'd never seen before. Not anger, not frustration. Something deeper, wilder. Like whatever darkness lived inside him had finally clawed its way fully out. He moved straight for Mama. "Why didn't you check on me?" he snarled. "Huh?" Mama stood slowly, putting herself between him and me without even thinking about it. "You just gonna sit out here?" he shouted, spit flying from his mouth. "Acting like you're too damn good for me, like you don't love me." "I do love you, Jake, please," she started, her voice shaking. "Liar!" He slammed his bottle against the wall and it shattered. Mama flinched, but then something in her changed. Maybe it was fear finally turned into fury. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was me. For the first time in my life, my mother stood up straight. No trembling, no shrinking. Just steel. "I am done with your shit," she said sternly. "You understand me? Done. I'm taking Nathan, taking the car, and we are leaving." For one suspended second, the whole world seemed to stop. Daddy just stared at her. Then Mama turned, reaching for me. And he hit her. The crack of it echoed through the cabin like a gunshot. His hand struck her so hard I heard something snap. Mama's body crumpled instantly, collapsing to the floor in a limp, horrifying heap. "Mom!" But Dad didn't move. He just stood there staring down at her. For one long, unbearable moment, I thought maybe he finally realized what he'd done. Then slowly he lifted the bottle to his mouth, took a long drink, turned his head toward me. I froze. Our eyes locked. And what I saw there, I still have nightmares about. There was no father left in that face. No man. Just rage. Pure, merciless rage. An anger so deep and empty, it felt like staring into the mouth of something monstrous wearing my daddy's skin. He started toward me. Then faster. Then he charged. I ran. I bolted for the door, Tears blinded me, heart pounding so violently I thought I might die right there. I flew off the porch, into the night, into the woods, branches clawing at my skin, roots grabbing for my feet, as Daddy's furious roar followed behind me. And just like before, my legs carried me to only one place, straight to the river. By the time I reached the river, my lungs were burning so badly I could barely breathe. Every gasp felt like fire, every heartbeat like a hammer trying to break out of my chest. Behind me, I could hear Daddy's crashing through the woods, his boots pounding the forest floor, branches snapping, his ragged breaths tearing through the night air like some enraged predator closing in. I was out of time. Frantically, I searched for anywhere to go, but the river was too wide, too fast, too wild. Its black water churned beneath the moonlight, impossible to cross. Panic clawed at me as I spun in desperate circles until I spotted it. An old fallen log near the bank, half rotted and hollowed underneath, just enough to create a narrow pocket beneath it. It wasn't much, but it was something. I dropped to my stomach and squeezed myself beneath the log, dirt grinding into my chest, splintered wood scraping my back. It was so tight I could barely move, but there was just enough room to breathe, and just enough of a gap to see. So I lay there trembling, trying not to make a sound. Daddy's footsteps got louder, closer. Then he emerged onto the riverbank. Even through that tiny crack, I could see him clearly, his chest heaving, shoulders rising and falling with each furious breath, his face twisted into something ugly and feral. He looked less like my father and more like pure hatred given flesh. His wild eyes darted across the riverbank searching for me. "Nathan!" he roared. I clamped both hands over my mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. Then I noticed it. The silence. It had come back. Not gradually. Not naturally. 1 second Daddy was stomping and cursing beneath the hum of crickets and rushing water, and the next, everything was gone. No insects, no wind, no river, nothing. This time, I wasn't afraid. Not like before. Curled beneath that log, tears streaking silently down my face, I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed. Not to God, not to anything I'd learned in church, but to the ancient ones Mama had whispered about. Please, keep me safe. For one endless moment, there was only silence. Then Daddy screamed. Not yelled, not cursed. Screamed. It was a sound so primal, so raw, so utterly terrified that it barely sounded human at all. Ripped through the woods like something torn straight from the soul. Then, a gunshot. The blast shattered the silence for half a heartbeat. I froze. I didn't even know Daddy had a gun. My whole body locked as I forced myself to look through the narrow gap beneath the log. Daddy was standing there, only a few yards away, but everything about him had changed. His face, God, I still see it sometimes, was frozen in absolute terror. His eyes were so wide I thought they might burst, his mouth hanging open, his body rooted in place like prey that had finally realized it was no longer the hunter. And then, something stepped in front of him. Massive, humanoid, dark. A wall of matted fur and impossible size blocked my view so completely it was like night itself had taken shape. Broad shoulders, long arms, too tall, too wide. The scent of wet earth and wild things seemed to fill the air even from where I hid. I slammed my eyes shut. I couldn't look. I couldn't. Daddy was begging now, pleading, crying. Same man who had spent my whole life making us afraid sounded small, helpless. Please. Snap. Sharp. Sudden. Final. Then, silence swallowed everything again. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. A moment later, that terrible creature let out a sound, a deep rumbling call that vibrated through the earth beneath me. Not rage, not triumph. Something older. Something almost declarative. Then slow, deliberate. My body went rigid. I squeezed my eyes tighter, bracing for claws, teeth, death, whatever ancient judgment had just claimed my father. But none of that came. Instead, peace. A strange, impossible wave of warmth and calm washed over me so suddenly it stole the fear right out of my body. Not sleepiness, not numbness, but peace. Deep and overwhelming, like being wrapped in safety itself. Like whatever stood above me knew exactly who I was and had chosen. I don't know how long I stayed like that before I finally opened my eyes. The woods were empty. No creature, no father, just trees. Slowly, sound returned, the insects first, then the wind, and finally the rushing river, as though the world itself had been allowed to live again. I stayed hidden there for what felt like forever, too terrified to move, waiting for something, anything to happen. But nothing did. After maybe 30 minutes, one awful thought finally broke through the haze. Mama. I scrambled out from beneath the log, shaking so hard I nearly fell. I looked around wildly for any sign of Daddy, but there was nothing. Nothing except for one patch of dark, thick liquid soaking into the dirt where he'd stood. I didn't investigate. I ran. When I burst from the woods, police lights painted the night sky red and blue, flashing across the cabins like some fever dream. Officers swarmed the area. Neighbors stood outside whispering, and there, wrapped in a blanket near an ambulance, was Mama, crying, talking to an officer. "Nathan!" She saw me before anyone else. I ran straight into her arms. When she swept me up, I buried my face in her long black hair and sobbed harder than I ever had before. Mama held me just as tightly, crying into me while the red and blue lights danced over us both. For the first time in my life, Daddy was gone. They searched those woods for days. Police, dogs, volunteers. They found his gun. They found broken branches. They found blood. They never found Jake. Not a body, not bones, not a trace beyond that riverbank. My father was never seen again. I sat there quietly for a long moment after I finished, staring into the empty bottle in my hand like maybe, after all these years, the bottom of it might finally hold some kind of answer. It never did. Across from me, the young man had gone pale. The fire in his bright green eyes was still there, but now it had changed. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was something deeper, something heavier. His pen had stopped moving somewhere near the end, his notepad forgotten in his lap. He stared at me like he wasn't entirely sure whether he'd just been told a ghost story or a confession. For a while, neither of us said a word. The bar carried on around us, glasses clinking, low country music humming from the old jukebox, the bartender wiping down the counter like the world hadn't just shifted a little in our booth. Finally, the kid swallowed hard and leaned forward. "So you really believe something out there saved you?" he asked quietly. "Something ancient?" I let out a slow breath, rolling the bottle between my palms before giving a small shrug. "Believe?" I said. "Son, I know what I saw. Maybe more importantly, I know what I survived." I leaned back, the old booth creaking beneath my weight, looked him dead in the eye. That's how I learned there are things in these forests older than us. Things people used to whisper about when campfires burned low, and night got too quiet. I paused, glancing toward the dark windows beyond the bar, toward the endless tree line stretching beyond that little Arkansas town. Some of them protect what needs protecting. The kid didn't interrupt, didn't even blink. I gave him the faintest ghost of a smile, though there wasn't much humor in it. "'Cause sometimes," I said, my voice rougher now, lower, "the real monsters aren't the ones hiding in old woods or shadowed rivers." I thought of my mother, her bruises, her trembling hands, the crack of bone. I thought of my father's face the moment fear finally found him. Then I looked back at the eager young man with his notebook full of mysteries, and I told him the truest thing I've ever learned. Sometimes monsters come looking just like the people you're supposed to trust the most. The words settled between us heavier than stone. I lifted my beer, realized it was empty, shrugged, and set the empty bottle down on the table with a dull clink. The kid opened his mouth like he wanted to ask another question. Probably 100 of them. But I was done talking. Some stories take enough out of a man the first time. So I stood, tossed a few bills on the table, and grabbed my old coat. As I passed him, rested a hand on his shoulder, just for a second. "Be careful what you go looking for in those woods, son," I said. "Not every mystery wants to be found." Then I gave him a nod, turned, and walked out of that old bar without another word. The bell above the door gave a tired little jingle as it shut behind me. Somewhere far off, beyond the town, beyond the roads, deep in the endless Arkansas trees, I could have sworn I heard something howl. Tonight's story, Mystery of the Red River, was written by Mari Elizabeth Holston. Mari has her own YouTube channel called Save Point Scares. It features original horror stories, creepypasta narrations, and cozy gaming content. The channel blends a love of unsettling storytelling with relaxing, story-driven games. Check out her latest story, What Lies Beneath Room 13, at Save Point Scares. I'll have some links to Mari's channel in the show notes. As always, all stories presented on this podcast are property of the writers and can't be reproduced without their express permission. Well, that one sure was a doozy. Thanks for letting me tell it, Mari. Hope I did it justice. If anyone out there listening has a story they'd like considered for a future episode, shoot me an email with the story in a Word document to cityofphear@gmail.com. Generally looking for stories between 4,000 to 6,000 words told from a first-person perspective. If you like the story tonight or any other, please give me a like, follow, rating, or whatever is applicable where you're listening. And as always, spread it around. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. So happy you decided to come and visit tonight. You're always welcome here. Have a great rest of the week, and hope to see you back real soon.